The Okay, so first off, welcome everybody. There's a lot of new faces here coming from Joshua's network. And I just want to first open with just sharing my appreciation for you taking the time to come onto this call, support Joshua. I'm really excited to dive into the lessons in leadership, in his book here, which my virtual background, there we go. Seven Leaders in Leadership, Clearing Your Road that Joshua published on. Before we get into this, there's probably a lot of people wondering who I am and what it is that I'm creating and the kind of space that I'm creating for people. And I want to start off with it started out as a little bit of an experiment. And oftentimes as leaders, we think about things and we come up with ideas and we really never know how it's going to turn out until we actually do the thing. So a little over a month ago, I said, I have never seen a negative return or something not positive from having conversations with people who are purpose driven, your leaders, and bringing those conversations together through community. And I decided to just start this build with Jake. This was just a tag because I'm a builder, not a home builder, but somebody who builds in businesses. I build websites, tech, all sorts of things for different entrepreneurs. And I decided, you know what? It's time to start building community because when you bring together these conversations, then it seems to have a profound impact on people's lives. And you never know what that can unlock for somebody. So the first couple weeks of starting this, it was really focused on creative entrepreneurs because for me, it's like I've been in creative services for almost 2 decades now. I've had a couple businesses in creative services, and that was really like the identity that I associated with myself. But then as I started seeing the people that were showing up on the calls, people like Joshua, I saw people who were creative, but the thing that really stood out to me was this person who was a rising leader. And the rising leader is something that, and I'm going to reference some notes I have here if you see me looking over, because one of the things I like to do is go for walks because it raises my frequency and it brings in the clarity to really pull together the thoughts and the true meaning behind what it is that I'm aspiring to do here. But when I think about that rising leader, it's empowering that rising leader to build confidence for whatever that next step is. It can mean different things for you in your life. So let's define that. Rising meaning that you see a new level of growth for yourself, right? There's something bigger that you aspire for your own journey, for your own self. Leader meaning that you're taking charge to do something of significance that has a positive impact on humanity. So if that resonates with you and you feel like that's what that speaks to the kind of person you are, then I just want to let you know that you're in the right place here. So build with Jake. This platform, it's evolving. I've already kind of talked about where it started. Now we're really focusing on rising leaders. About a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago, I reached out to Joshua because, him and I have known each other for about 6 months. And I said, Joshua, I've been having these calls, but it's just been me showing up and speaking, and I really don't want it to just be the Jake show. I really want to pull in people that have their own messages that they want to share. And I know you've got this amazing book, coming from these conversations that you've had with your grandfather. It's really inspiring, and I wanted to see, like, would you be interested in hosting a call and inviting people from your network to come onto this call and have that conversation? And Joshua said, yes, that sounds great. Let's do it. So we put together the registration link, we put together the plan, and here we are today. And the last thing I want to say is I want to talk about just the collective momentum behind the community building piece here as Joshua comes on today, because there's people here that are coming from Joshua's world. You all know Joshua, through different interactions. There's also people here from my world. And we're all kind of coming together collectively to interact in this proximity in a way that can unlock whatever that growth might be for you. It could be something that's said, through Joshua's presentation. It could be something that somebody brings up in some open discussion that through that leadership, that person stepping into that leadership uh, can create, can create awareness or clarity or confidence for you to be able to take whatever that next step is. So, all that to be said, just want to say thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be here. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Joshua. He's going to go ahead and start us off with the seven lessons in leadership and get us going.
Hey, Jake, thanks a lot. I appreciate you creating this platform and reaching out to me to be your first to just see where we can go with this. And the timing was impeccable. And I just also want to thank each of you for showing up, especially some of you who are in the 9 o'clock or 8 a.m. time zones in our country. Appreciate that. It's been on my heart before and really since I published the book to create a community to bring leaders together in a space where we can talk, support each other, learn from each other, and just get better. And I wasn't sure how to do that. And then boom, like literally as that really got heavy on my heart, Jake reached out. So here we are. This is kind of like an experiment. So thank you all for being the first in the group to really try it out. So what I'm looking for is feedback from you at the end. Jake's gonna have some feedback. Would love to hear your honest take on like, hey, this could go somewhere. Maybe have you thought of this or what? Anything, because I individually invited each of you because I respect each of you for the work that you do, for the leadership you have, and just the role you have played in my life. So with that, I want to make sure there's some connections being made. So I'm going to go through my list 15, 20 seconds. Who you are, where are you, like in what you do, and then how you know me. So everybody can kind of make that connection. Starting with Bree. I'm gonna go right down my list and call you out. Bree?
Hi. Oh my goodness, introvert.
Yes,
Okay.
right off the bat, the introvert. Go for it.
I'm an introvert. Brianna Willie, business for nerds. I know you through Jake, and hi. It's nice to meet y'all.
That was perfect, Bree. Cameron.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I kind of met Josh through Will, and I mean I've known Jake too, also through Will Winston, who does Primal Podcast, Primal Journey. Yeah, and I'm inspired by you, Josh, and I'm just so glad that you've invited me here, and I can't wait to meet everybody and see where we grow from.
Yeah, man. And Cameron's here in Virginia. He's not over in the UK. So
No,
yeah, go.
yeah, that's yeah. The UK doesn't have sunshine like this.
I love it. I love it. Danielle. You're on mute, Danielle. You're on. There you go.
Sorry, still muted. Um, I'm in a busy office right now and in preschool. It's the last day of camp for a couple weeks. So I met Joshua because his kiddos came here to River Road Preschool. I see lots of names I know as well from my Chesterfield days and Renee as well. But I met Joshua there. He has also been a speaker for me at several RAD, which is Richmond Area Director meetings, sharing his leadership perspective with them.
Thanks, Danielle. Catherine.
Good morning. I am doing like five different things back here, but I wanted to hear this chat today. Joshua was one of the very, very first educational leaders I got to work with in Chesterfield. And present day, I own a publishing company, so but I'm able to work with Joshua along the way for his writing, including this book. And I cannot wait to hear the speech today. So thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. She's trying to be all low key, and I called her out. I know you're multitasking. Milo, Miles.
What's up? My name's Milo, based here in Richmond, Virginia, but I travel like pretty much everywhere for work. I'm a director and a cinematographer and a musical artist. And I met Josh back in 2022, I think, or 2021,
Yeah,
leading up to Journey, which was a film that I had created. And I met him like before the film came out, and we kind of just kept in contact ever since. And always meet up and grab lunch and just talk about life. So, and he's been in some of my short films. So, yeah.
appreciate you, Milo. All right, Natsumi.
Sorry, thanks for that. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Natsumi Alvarez. I use she, they pronouns. I am based out of Salt Lake City, and I am part of the human resources team at Waterford.org, which is an early education nonprofit. Our focus is early literacy, and I was super lucky to get to work on a team with Joshua for just about like 3 years, I want to say. And he was actually my like direct supervisor for I want to say like at least half of that time until earlier this year. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of the conversation today and looking forward to getting to know other folks and interacting together. So thanks for the invitation, Joshua.
Thanks for being here, Natsumi. Renee.
Good morning, everyone. I currently serve as an assistant principal here in Chesterfield County. Joshua and I had the opportunity to lead together at an elementary school for about 9 years.
Love it. Thanks for being here. Dr. Grimes, Tamisha.
Good morning, everyone. I am Tamisha Grimes. I am currently wrapping up my career in K-12 education, retiring from there June 30th. Simultaneously, I am transitioning into the role of Executive Director of Mentor Virginia, which is a nonprofit organization that provides training for any person or organization that would like to mentor youth. And I met Joshua a really long time ago in Chesterfield, so long ago that I'm old. I don't remember exactly what our roles were when we first met, but he's been an inspiring young man and one that I think I have had the opportunity to have a positive influence on, but also he's had a great influence on my career as well.
Thanks, Tamisha, and happy retirement. Look at you going right back to work the next day. I love it. Yeah. Trina.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Trina Edwards, and I'm with Diversity in Ed. And Dr. Cole and I have been uh, knowing one another for probably, I think we're almost at a decade now.
Yeah.
If not,
Yeah.
I'll claim it because it's just been so meaningful and purposeful, both professionally and personally. And we met through a mutual business associate, and I just fell in love with his work, his passion, his mission, and certainly his first book, or maybe it wasn't your first book, but it was one of your earlier books about the
Character
children.
Club. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And since then, we've just grown, and Dr. Cole has served on our board of advisors for education. So it's been really great journey with him, and so happy to continue this next stage of the journey. So big fan, and just love your heart. Thank you so much for including me.
Feelings mutual for everyone. I so appreciate everyone being here. I'm gonna get into this. I'll tell you, I was telling Jake, am I able to share my screen, Jake? Yeah, I see it right here.
Yeah.
I was telling Jake that let's see. I'm so used to doing presentations, right? And teaching people, right? That's what my career has been in education. And this isn't one of those type of deals. So I have like this PowerPoint as a guide just to highlight the 7 lessons in leadership that are highlighted in my book. And if you had a chance to read it, thank you. I appreciate it. If you haven't, would love for you to check it out. I'd love to get your feedback. I wrote it based on leadership lessons I've learned from my grandfather, of talking with him every week. I talked to him this morning actually, and he's always dropping knowledge and wisdom from a 91-year-old experience as a mechanical foreman that I took and built into these lessons that I wove into a story from a leadership perspective as an educator. But as we see on this call, there's so many professions represented in the works that you're doing. Now, in my heart, I believe we're all educators in some way, shape, or form, and we're all leaders also, whether it's in our family, with home, our work, wherever it may be in our communities. But in this space here today, I just really want to speak to these lessons and high level. And I really would love for you just to kind of listen and think about how this has applied to you. Maybe you have takeaways from when you read the book, or if you haven't, or just in life, and start to think about what are things that you do really well and what are things that you want to improve upon. And then we're going to have like this opportunity to dialogue about it. So the first lesson from my grandpa: alarm goes off, feet hit the floor. That's his way of saying get up, get to work, right? Start your day, work your butt off as best you can in a way that is meaningful to help others, but leading by example. And that's just about showing up and doing all the steps that you need to take. Some friends of mine, we talk about having these miracle mornings, right? And I love it when I get up in time to like have me time and my focus, and I meditate and pray, and I do all the steps that help me work out and get ready before everybody else in my house wakes up so I can be more focused on getting my tasks done. When I don't, by noon, it could be a nightmare versus that miracle morning. But it's give and take about the choices I make. And that starts really with just getting up and getting at it. So there's some takeaways there that I won't read all this, but maybe you have something too that you're doing well with that, or maybe that's an area that you want to improve upon. So again, if you could just kind of rank that in your head, we're going to do an activity and then have some discussion about it. The next lesson in the book is about building relationships with everyone and anyone. And that can be hard sometimes, especially if you always don't get along with everyone. But as a leader, we show up to do so in a way that we're representing, right? We're demonstrating our ability to get our own hands dirty. That's my grandpa's quote. Get your own hands dirty. Get in there, do the work. I'll use a example from my education days, being a principal. We I'll say, Renee, you know this. On the bus loop, end of the day, as best we can, being involved, making connections with people, helping, doing our part to demonstrate we're in this with everyone else. Versus, you know, some other people have different styles. They may just watch from their office and look out the window, or from the hallway or some other place. Sure, everybody has their style, but are you really building a relationship in that way? Are you putting in the work to make those connections and that effort and so forth? Whatever space you're in, again, are you putting that in so that you can work alongside people? And nothing's too small to demonstrate that. The next lesson in the book is talking about working and living with integrity. Integrity might be one of my favorite words. My grandpa would phrase this as, if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. I love this because it's not about like trying to lie or get away with it or always trying to be honest. It's really about just being who you are and making sure that comes out in every action that you're demonstrating, right? And for me, if you drill down deeper, as I've even processed this from writing about and thinking about it, it's really the opportunity to avoid any type of worry and stress and hang up that can cause you delays in your production in life as a leader. And that also then begins with awareness, right? Things that we all know, we got to be aware. But even a step slower for me has been just slowing down. How can we do that? Maybe you do it well. Would love to hear from you later about how do you slow down and just be still. Maybe you have your own processes that people can learn from, or maybe there's a space in here where you can say, hey, you know what? This is an area that I want to get better at. Because when you bring in the word living with integrity, yeah, I may do that, but are there some things that I can do to be better at it? So that's also I want you to be thinking about in terms of how we can be better in the roles that we play as leaders. I might do it well, but how can I be better? The next lesson, this is the heart of the book. This is really at the heart of, I believe, leadership. My grandpa says, I never won an argument. I mean, you should hear him when he says it. I just never won an argument because he knows there's some people it's not worth arguing with, right? And plus, if you know you're right, your actions can demonstrate that. Words save your energy instead of trying to boast and be prideful about whatever the case may be. I love the idea that we can address our own egos by that maybe being the thing that's in our way. I know for me that's helped tremendously, and that's hard to admit sometimes, right? So there's some vulnerability happening as leaders here in the work you do every day, plus on this call. So thanks for stepping into it. But as we try to really lead with that vulnerability and be empathetic for others, what are some things that we can do to admit, you know what, I might be certain about this, but I also might be wrong. And then how am I gonna fix that? Right? What has gotten in my way? And a lot of times it's us. So displaying a humble confidence. How confident can you be, but also humble at the same time? That's a phrase that speaks to my heart in more ways than one, not just from what my grandpa's taught, but a lot of my experiences in life as a leader and uh, another leadership role that if you haven't thought about that, some may play is just as a parent. If you are one, being humble and confident at the same time is extremely important. Next lesson, lesson 5 from the book, it talks about deciding to be bold. This can be hard sometimes because it's a grind. My grandpa says, "Just keep going." Pretty simple phrasing, but there's so many other brands I think that have tried to phrase it like "just do it." Right? Nike says it, or I can't think of other off the top of the head, but just get at it, right? Grind, work hard, but that can lead to some exhaustion. But I think it really has to do with taking one step at a time, doing what you know is right, moving forward, even though there might be times of uncertainty. I even or fear, right? There's some um, hesitation there at times because you just the unknown. I even bring in some of my experiences when I was a server at a restaurant, right? And you think about, oh, I'm overwhelmed and I got to do this and put this in and get this person water. But you slow down, you take it one step at a time and just stick with it. Have that will from being a server at a restaurant to a leader at a school to a mentoring program across Virginia, whatever it may be, uh, really boiling it down to you making those choices step by step. Lesson 6 from the book, making time for yourself and your family. This is where I really tried to reel back in the storytelling for the main character to prioritize themselves. And that is hard because when we think of leadership, right, we want to do our best and we want to work as hard as we can to demonstrate and be there for others because that's what's in our hearts. And I know each of you and I know the work that you're putting in and all the different capacities from writing books to making videos to publishing your magazines. I mean, the list goes on. But I encourage all of us to remember my grandpa's phrase of the work will be there tomorrow. Find that time and space where we can find that balance for ourselves. Balance is a weird word to think about because do we really have a balance? Sometimes we have to do a little extra. Sometimes we need to take that break. And when I talk about break, I mean building in a rest, not as a reward, but as a requirement. I've learned that just from like working out and you know taking that time to let your body heal, let your mind heal, let your soul heal in whatever way you can. I think about Diane Sawyer. Diane Sawyer, the anchor on ABC News. It was like a decade ago. I think she was called out for state. She was like a late night election news coverage, and people were saying, "Is she intoxicated, or is she just really tired?" She was just exhausted. I remember that news coming out, and then I read about how she would work like 20-hour days and sleep like 4 hours for a week, and then sleep like 20 hours on the weekend. Well, I don't know Diane Sawyer personally, but as I heard her admit that and realize that that wasn't the most healthy thing, I think we all can take a page from that. I know nobody here is an ABC news anchor, but we all have a very important job in our own space. We are anchors of our own life as a leader. So, taking heat from a Diane Sawyer and others who may give you some inspiration to make those choices to manage your life in the best way, to not overwhelm yourself with work, because I've been there. I've been the workaholic. It's so important. And again, this is an area that you're doing really well at. We'd love to hear from you in a little bit, or if an area that you want to get better at. Hopefully, you can get some nuggets of information, some gems from others here on the call that are doing it well. The last lesson, as you think about where you are in your work, is just the planning ahead. And that planning ahead is not just like making your list in a planner. And I have mine, and I do it all day. But it's really trusting that you're making those right choices. And my grandpa's phrase is, "What we do in the shop, we don't have to do in the snowbank." So thinking ahead in a way that's a preventative maintenance, because he was a mechanical foreman, and the story goes in the snow lot where I'm from in Michigan, you want to get it right ahead of time so you're not out there in the freezing cold trying to fix a problem. Whatever that metaphor is for your life, whatever you can get right in the space you're in right now to help you with that struggle that might come later, and that later might just be today or tomorrow or maybe 10 years from now. However you can put that work in to really build your own planning and your own confidence in having that, as it says here, the forethought and faith in yourself and your team. How you do that, and if you're doing it well, would love to hear from you about that. And again, if you want to get better at it, please let's share. I'm reminded, when I just was planning this morning, thinking about what I was going to say, the movie A Miracle on 34th Street came up in my head. The old movie. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, or maybe you haven't, but there's this lady. She's the director of the whole Macy's Day Parade, right? And then they need a new Santa Claus for the parade, and then she finds one. That's part of the story. But I remember watching that. I know it's a movie, but the calm in the organization she had in herself, and the presence of mind to be poised. I think that's what this is about, right? How we can prepare ourselves on a daily for whatever is facing us, a problem. I know none of us here are organizing the Macy's Day Parade, but we all have our own type of parades we're trying to run every day. And if we can be ready for whatever circumstance that comes our way, that we can be ready to pivot and insert and do what we need to do to keep things running smooth for those that we're serving, then that's what I want to help us all grow upon here. And not just in this conversation, but the bigger community opportunity for leaders. Leadership is hard. I mean, it's just not about making those decisions on a daily and trying to be the best we can be, for this person and that person. It's about the long range application of everything that we're trying to do to really be the best for ourselves. And again, I called on each of you to be here today just to kind of get an overview of these lessons, get you thinking about what you do well and what you want to do better. And then hopefully we can share a little bit here over the next, I don't know what we got, Jake, another half hour or so, just from the wisdom and expertise and the talents that are on this call, to see how we can support each other. And then, yeah, we can go from there. So I'm going to pause. That's my quick overview of my 7 lessons in leadership from my grandfather. And again, they're all in the book. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I'd love to get your feedback on that. But Jake, I think we have a poll right now that's going to help everyone kind of organize their thoughts in terms of what they're doing well and what they want to do better at, right?
Yep, let me go ahead and pull these up. So there's going to be 2 polls that we're going to take. Just as you take some time and you go through Joshua's presentation and these 7 lessons to reflect for your own life. So the first question is, hopefully I don't mess this up because I've never done a Zoom poll before, but here we go. Okay. Can everybody see the poll? Did it pop up? Perfect. So the question is, which 3 of these leadership lessons do you believe you are currently demonstrating most effectively in your leadership practice? And you can pick any of the 3 from the 7. Give us some time.
All right. I think we got it, Jake.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here.
So I have it on my end too. I can hit end
Okay.
poll.
Okay. So if you hit infill, okay, perfect.
And then I'll share results. Can everybody see this by chance?
Yep.
You can? Okay. Thanks you for setting that up, Jake. It looks like some of the top ones, building relationships. There's some people doing a great job of that here on the call. I love it. Also making that time for yourself and your family. And a couple other working with and living with integrity, being ready to work, displaying humble confidence. I see, but I'm catching a trend already for a couple that may need some areas of growth, deciding to be bold and planning ahead with trust in yourself. So let's switch to the next one because that's the next question. Thank you for everybody for contributing to this poll. This is helpful. The next one, Jake, I'll let you load that one.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So the next question is, which 3 of these leadership lessons do you feel present the greatest opportunities for growth in your current leadership practice?
All right, this is great. This is great. All right, sharing results so everybody can see. It looks like overwhelmingly deciding to be bold. The idea of moving forward with that trust in yourself is an area that people want to, get better at. Planning ahead with trust in yourself as well. Those are the top 2. So what I would love is for anyone just to come off mute and either share like, hey, you know what? I've actually seen some strides in myself, like where I'm getting better at having this confidence, right? To be bold and to make these decisions, to be a leader in spaces that are always not easy. Or even if you want and you feel open, why it is an area that you want to get better at. What is it that's holding you back? Why is it a challenge? And then we can maybe have a discussion about that one, since it's such a prevalent category that people want to improve upon. So I'm going to open it up to the crew of leaders here for some discussion.
I will take a stab, Joshua. It's
Yeah.
Danielle. So I would say I think one of the things that it's hard to like just embrace being bold is because you're worried about failure and things like, worried about like taking a portion of your budget and investing it in something, and you've got to be successful when you're on those. So I think I'm very cautious about what I do to make sure I'm successful in what I do, especially when you're representing I'm representing my preschool.
Yeah. Yeah, that idea of failure can be a hindrance. And you also mentioned budget in there too, right? The funding
Yes.
circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for getting us started, Danielle. What are some others feelings about that or takeaways from what Danielle said?
I'm happy. Oh, go ahead.
For me, it is embarking on something completely different. I mean, it's related, but it's completely different. After, uh, I'll stick to my standard, over 20 years in public education, shifting to a nonprofit sector, but also just it's related but different. Um, Being confident in the skills and knowledge and background that I have and the ability to apply it to a new environment, but also remaining open to the fact that there's still so much to learn in the new environment. It's that boldness but also balance is what came to mind for me when thinking about that poll.
Tamisha, the idea of switching from K-12 and I've done it to higher ed to nonprofit, you're stepping into an unknown. I can relate to that. And then, how do you show up and still be you and within the new environment? So appreciate that take. Someone else was going to jump in there. I'm not sure. Was it you, Cameron? Yeah.
Yeah, I unmuted. I was going to be courageous. I mean, I never actually said what I do, and I don't really do anything, but I do everything. Yeah, I'm more of a stay-at-home dad. I've worn many hats in my life, and it's being bold and being weary of a future that we know nothing about, especially with the advent of AI. And I know when I met you, and as I've said and I mentioned Primal, but as I've said with the groups that come through, people say, "What is my desire?" I want to help change the world, and how do I do that? You've inspired me, and and I haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks, but I've started on my track to actually write a book, and get that going, and bringing in all of these components. But it's very much looking at everything I've done, not looking to the past as a point of depression, of missed opportunities, mistakes, and things, but to understand that everything there provided a lesson for me and has provided me a lesson. And the failure on my behalf, I think, would be to see those things as failures or successes only. Everything's a lesson. It's all happened for a reason. And there are all these different quotes that are there, but there's success in every opportunity. You just have to be willing to look for it, and I think that's a push for being bold too. Is just taking that step. The idea of writing a book, and again, you're very inspirational in that, but you've done two. I'm behind. But yeah, it is the doubt. Why would anybody want to read a book that I would seek to write?
Well, man, it's like, well, first of all, I appreciate what you're saying about the idea of failure. That kind of makes me think about what Danielle was saying and how it's really an opportunity, a lesson, right? And how you can use that and reframe it. And we've talked about your idea for a book, and our connection is for everybody is really the health and wellness journey and having a primal lifestyle and putting that out there and being bold. I think that's something that you're doing in your actions, and I'm excited to see how you put it down in paper, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one hell of a task, but yeah, I'm inspired on my walks, and I just write notes down as they come to me, and then slowly I'll start compiling that all
Yeah.
together and rewrite it and make it look better, and then the arduous task of references will come in. You've got to
Yeah.
support it with the data.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks, Cameron. I'd love to hear from some others here too, especially along those lines of whatever space you're in and kind of sharing that and things that have been a hiccup or a hindrance or in your way and how you're trying to go past it. I see a couple people unmuted. Go ahead,
I'll say something.
Milo. Yeah.
I think what I liked most about lesson 5 was it was kind of a surprise to me that it was in here, but the graph about practicing self-love.
Hmm.
And I think that's one thing about being bold or entering into an unknown or a field that you're not quite sure about is that you have to do a lot of self-reflection. And I think if you're really comfortable in a role, you're kind of on autopilot and you don't think too much. But when you're not comfortable, you're more self-conscious and you have to look, I guess, inward and think more about who you are as a person to try to build yourself up to get through the uncomfortable moments to become comfortable in a new position. So I think like the positive self-talk is something that's huge. But I always take notes when I read different books, but also giving yourself the grace of like why worry when you can't really change all of your situations. So, being optimistic, reframing different things, not like why are things happening to me, but why are things happening for me? Kind of like,
Hmm. Well, first of all, Milo did his homework. I mean, he read the book, did the chart, the self-love chart. I forgot I even put that in there, but that's really good point, man. Self-reflection to give yourself the grace. Jake, you and I were talking about that before this presentation. That is so important.
Yeah.
So important. Thanks, man. Um, Trina, did I see you come off? Oh,
I did. I
yeah.
came off, and thanks. Yeah, mine is a little bit interesting to myself. It's um it's not the self-confidence that I struggle with as much. I totally believe in the courageous leadership. I think it's Cameron. He had mentioned being courageous. That's really huge in my practice and encouraging others to do so. I think I have that part, but it comes with my challenge are with roadblocks from others, whether it's individuals or systems, relying on others that impact me and my work that make me question myself. Am I going in the right direction? And it also, and this is somewhat jumping to the book in another area, but the imposter syndrome and that fear of not being as capable as some perceive you to be. So that's where that duality comes in. Like in one hand, I do feel confident and I do have the support, and then here comes the roadblocks from others, systems, individuals. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's about that vulnerability that challenges me.
It does make sense. And I'm so glad you brought in imposter syndrome. I saw a few head nods on that one. Anyone want to jump in on that? Thanks for being courageous and sharing that, Trina. That's a real thing.
I can say a few things about imposter syndrome. I was just writing notes as you were going through your presentation on some self-reflections, particularly about lesson 5, deciding to be bold. And one of the things that I think can show up for, and I've seen it show up for myself, is that you have this kind of story that you know yourself to be. And, so like for years, it's funny, like my mom always tells the story. When I was in kindergarten, she got a phone call from my kindergarten teacher and said, "You'll never believe this." My mom goes, "What?" She's like, "Jake came up and talked to me and asked me to tie his shoes," because I was such a backward kid and I was so shy. I was incredibly introverted. And when she found out that I was doing podcasting and doing stuff like this, she's like, "What? Like, you're doing what?" Like, little Jake, who couldn't even speak to his kindergarten teachers, is out there having conversations and building community. And the thing I wrote is that sometimes you can really surprise yourself, like just by taking an action and stepping forward into a little bit of discomfort. And I learned this something that was really helpful for me a couple years ago through a mentor. Is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Jeff Spencer, who's somebody I've had a pleasure of being around, and he calls it playing soft offense. And playing soft offense, and Bree, I'm sure you're familiar with this because we kind of come from the similar space, is like it's a process of taking some micro steps. So like if you're unsure or you're uncertain about something, then take what's the smallest step that you can take to get just enough data and feedback to inform the next step that you should take from there. So like this community is an example of that. I just like I want to start hosting calls and I'm not even really on social media. I didn't do this big giant leap of a big splash or anything. I just reached out to people I knew and said, I want to start having calls and I'm not really sure where this is going to go. And now a little over a month later, here we are today. And it was very uncomfortable for me because that person that I just said before about, the little kid that's very shy and backward, I think sometimes still exists inside of me.
Hmm.
But it's like changing that story. It's like, no, this is the person I really want to become. I want to become that leader. And this is what I'm wanting to step into. And stepping into it through those micro steps of playing soft offenses personally has been very helpful for me. So wanted to share that for anybody that's might be in that stage in your growth.
Man, Jake, I'm so glad you've been taking micro steps. Like you said, look where we are here today. I'm just thrilled that people are connecting who've never met each other, but I know their talents. And so that brings me to a question for everyone. What are some other micro steps people have taken? Like in whatever, entrepreneurship idea that you have, or maybe in the space that you're in at your own job to like push a little bit, right? Because I heard someone say earlier, the systems, right, can really get you back and fight against you. Who said that? Um, I can't remember now, but thoughts on that? Anybody have any like success stories, things that they've done well? Is that you, Milo?
Yeah, I'll say one thing. I was doing a lot of cinematography in Richmond, and I felt like I was being boxed in as someone who was just like a Richmond video guy, and I never wanted that for myself. So I decided to start traveling like around the country and making my own projects and kind of challenges for myself to test myself as an artist, and then kind of start to move more internationally. So that way, instead of people thinking of me as someone local, like even as far as like changing my name, like you probably see it says Milo Global, so that when people see my name, they immediately think of something like worldwide as opposed to local. And I think that's done nothing but kind of like help broaden my horizons, like help me see different cultures and how different people operate. Um, and it's interesting how people perceive like my work now. Like I'll do the exact same thing at Main Street Station, but if I do it in Milan or if I do it in Berlin or if I'm in, Guam, all of a sudden it feels like it's grander. It's the exact same techniques, but sometimes you just have to get out of your immediate area to be appreciated other places for other people to realize what you're doing. So I think a lot of people do that in the arts. So I kind of been trying to do that a little bit more, and I think it's definitely helping out like personally in some of my businesses. So yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Miles. Milo Global. I'm used to calling him Miles. I got it. That's sweet, man. Anyone else that resonate with them in the work that they're doing?
Yeah, I was thinking mine is more local, I think, but the last year or so, I think for myself, as I've been growing as a professional, as a person, etc., I think in response to just like some uncertainty in my life, both professionally and I don't know, like the current state of affairs of the world. My way of kind of growing through that and learning through that has been to seek out new opportunities, to just be able to engage in more of like a volunteer capacity and as I'm trying lots of new things, I I'm a perfectionist and a recovering perfectionist, I should say, and it's been really hard for me over the course of my life to, like if I start something, I feel the need to see it through and to commit to it. But I think part of like that, like steps or lessons 6 and 7 out of the ones that you presented, Joshua, right? Some of that includes being able to take a step back sometimes and say, you know what, this was wonderful, I'm so glad that I tried it, and now I'm going to say no. and and instead dedicate my time and my efforts and talents to something that I already know is more aligned with my spirit and is going to nourish it a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's hard to say no, but it can be really, really good.
Natsumi, wow. Uh, you are a recovering perfectionist and growing, I can tell. We haven't caught up in a while, so I can't wait to catch up. But you're talking about boundaries there, right? Saying no and looking out for
Yep.
yourself. Yeah, good stuff. Anyone else that this is conjuring up some feelings or emotions or thoughts? Shimko.
Yeah, so I can appreciate everything that has been said and shared. Congrats, Dr. Grimes, on your new role, and I'm happy for you in that. I think, so many of these things have just connected for me. That fear of failure that we talked about, not just professionally, but personally, those roadblocks, I think that Trina had touched on. I've just been taking little notes here, and it is those systems, right? And how we can train, change, and motivate others to change their systems, not just professionally, but personally too. I think for me, a lot of that comes within those trust of others, as well as trust in myself. And how are we going to trust others to help us change some of these systems and roadblocks that are in place? I know Joshua and I had a conversation about that a couple of weeks ago, and just bringing leaders together, and here we are, right? Here we are, just a couple of weeks later. Here we are, and it's happening. So I appreciate that. And then Natsumi, I can totally relate with that perfectionism piece, but also the saying no. Um, and the more I've been able to say no has been more rewarding for myself and in the things that I want to do, not just personally, but professionally as well. I just recently became a 12-month contract person. Never in a million years did I think that I would take off almost 3 weeks of school in the middle of the school year or the beginning of the school year. And here I am, and I'm going to do it. And I'm devoting that time to my husband and I for our 25th wedding anniversary. And it's just so freeing. Joshua, you'd mentioned about building in rest as a requirement and not as a reward. And I've been doing that more. And I feel better about myself moving forward, not only in the work that I'm doing on myself, but I have noticed it has kind of transpired and inspired and changed for the better in the school that I work in. People overall have said, wow, we're really positive around here. And people that come into our building are like, what's going on around here? Things are in a different light. And I do think some of that spark has been because of the change that I've made in myself.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Renee. I know you've been working hard in all areas, so thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Um, a few others before we, get close to time here. I want to make sure we end on time.
I think that a balance between personal and professional is really important. And I'm always amazed and thankful to be in a space with so many other introverts. And then you throw on top of that, not only am I introverted, but I'm actually very shy. And working in an area where we are constantly, I say, preaching to our staff members to encourage kids to try new things, to challenge themselves, not to be afraid of failure. It's real easy to say and not necessarily easy to do, which is where I think some of that perfectionism comes into play, some of that being afraid to be bold. And so I will say that COVID, right, wrong, or indifferent, for as much turmoil as it caused, for me personally, it also led to a lot of reflection and rethinking how I thought about things and approached things. So, from a personal perspective, after COVID, I really put myself out there and had to stop worrying about what I thought others thought and just took up ballroom dancing and competing in the pro amateur area because it was something I'd never would have thought that I would have done before. But it's that self-care piece, right? What is it? I struggle. I can't tell you how many gyms I've joined and quit going to, or how many um, subscriptions I've had to apps and whatnot and just didn't follow through. But knowing that health is important. And so, what is it? What was something that I loved to do? Dancing, and then could also challenge myself and actually model what I'm telling our teachers and our kids to do versus just preaching it. And so this conversation has been very helpful, and you all have said things that have really reinforced. Josh, your book is inspiring. So thank you all so much for the time this morning and what it is you've had to say.
No, that's great. One or two more. I love that. What, anything else on someone's heart or mind?
I mean, Josh, I just wanted to speak to lesson four,
Yep.
displaying a humble confidence. It reminds me of a conversation I had with my mother-in-law, and it wasn't as well received by her. But it's again to each their own, and it's not a rude one. But we were on a long drive down in Florida, and for whatever the reason this came up into topic, I kind of said to there's the situation in the world. I think as individuals, where I should say, where we no matter how vehemently we feel about something, no matter how visceral it is to us and how important it is to us, there's 8 billion people in the world that just don't care. And what makes you think that what you care about is so important? Now, the caveat to that is what you care about is the single most important thing in the world. Nothing else matters, because that's what you have to deal with. But it's that humility piece that if we could all be a little bit more humble, that again, you're so passionate, and you look at a world that's becoming so isolated and so divided, when we have all this ability to communicate and we have all this information at our hands, and we become so divided with, because we're becoming more insular, because we only listen to things. We've got algorithms that only push the things that pertain to us, and so we don't listen to the other sides. We don't always contemplate what else is actually out there for us to learn from. And again, it's whatever you believe in, that's wonderful, but that's based on the information. Unless you can get those basic truths, there's no carbohydrate deficiency disease in the world. So carbs are a choice. You don't have to eat the carbs, but I mean, you can get much more. Obviously, you can get onto much hotter topics than simply carbs. But it's those kind of things that you hold something as so true, but it might not actually be the truth for most people, or some people. So have humility in your presentation and how you speak, and how you approach things.
Yeah, matters. Thanks, Cameron. No, yeah. Got time for one more.
I was going to just say, this is Catherine
Hey.
Stark. I was just going to say as a closer that I'm an author primarily of educational materials, but I write fiction for a reason. And I had told Joshua, it really does take a brave person to write a book like this that is self-reflective, but also gives tips. And I think it's so valuable because everybody here and all of us who have read it feels good to know other people are feeling the same way you do, because we don't always talk about those things. So it is lovely to know that everybody here feels a little bit of imposter syndrome, and feels a little bit of perfectionism issues, and feels a little bit of, how am I going to really show myself in this situation? So just thanks for putting this together. And it's good to know that a lot of people are connecting for the same purpose.
Well, thank you, Catherine Stark, for bringing some closure to that. In fact, that's partly what I was going to say too. And you're right on point. It warms my heart to know that we're all in a space right now where we don't feel alone, right? And that was the whole idea for this. Is like you can just leadership can be lonely, and to know that there's others out there who are out there working hard for the same purpose. But maybe this is part of the feedback I would love from each of you later, is that, how could this grow, or what could be done differently, or what do you think? How can, we need a space to support each other without worry of judgment, right? And because the world is full with that. And if we can create our own little space, and then hopefully that can bloom more, that's part of what has been on my heart. I don't know how that will all happen, but I believe it starts with people like each of you, and so I'm grateful that you were able to take something from today. And one last person I saw who came in a little bit late. I got to call her out. Laura, Lay, thanks for being here. Can you hear me, Laura?
I can. Thank you. This has been great. I know I've been running around. I'm trying to get my son ready for scout camp, but I needed this little breath of inspiration.
Now, Laura and I are
Thank
former
you.
teachers, colleagues, and do work together with the Milken organization. So thanks, Laura. And thank you all. This has been great. Jake, I'm going to pass it to you for the final 2 minutes.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you everybody for being here and all of your contributions too. I and Joshua, of course, just bringing the conversation together. Just such a rock star and how you showed up today as a leader for everybody. So I want to say thank you for that. And being here today. And everybody took an hour out of the day to be here, and I want to express that gratitude. Just a couple final thoughts as we wrap up here. Um, One is so I do have, like, if anybody that's on this call that wants to or has any interest in hosting a call, feel free to reach out to me. You're on my email list. I use it as a communication tool. I'm not here to market or promote anything. I'm just here to bring together connections. So just want to set that expectation. But if you are somebody that maybe has something that you want to speak on, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you facilitate, another event like this. I will be hosting an event where I'll be the one hosting it the first of the month. It's just called a monthly report. And it's just a time for us to reflect on the past month and think about the actions that we're taking and just be present with that. I'll have some prompts. We'll pull together some discussions. If we get a room of this size where we got multiple people, what we'll probably do is some breakout rooms where we can kind of get a little bit more of an intimate conversation going on, and just helps you build some new relationships and connections in the process. Uh, and the last thing I want to mention is next week I'll have a replay ready for this call. So if you want to go back and revisit, I'll put together some key takeaways. And I also will have like a feedback form. Just if anybody wants to provide some feedback, that would be really helpful for both Joshua and myself to give us, again, taking that micro step. What's the feedback? How can we inform next steps on how we can grow? So that to say, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Joshua, just want to send
Good
all.
stuff.
You did such an amazing job today facilitating, and I appreciate everybody being here.
Thanks, Al. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Have a great weekend.